A ruthless tech billionaire threw a rusted key onto the table, laughing as he took the last $1,000 cash from Leo, a broke mechanic he had just fired. Arthur thought he had pulled off the ultimate corporate scam, selling a condemned, toxic junk garage to a desperate fool just to avoid environmental cleanup lawsuits. But the CEO made a fatal mistake. Hidden deep beneath the cracked concrete floors of that ruined garage, buried under decades of debris, sat a sealed titanium military bunker protecting a lost multi-billion-dollar clean energy technology that modern science deemed impossible to build. Exactly 6 months later, the tech world would witness a brutal financial execution. Arthur's empire would crash to absolute zero, forcing the arrogant billionaire to kneel on that very same dirty concrete, begging this silent genius for mercy. Here is how $1,000 destroyed $1 billion. Hello, my friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which country you are watching from. Leo had sacrificed 10 long, grueling years of his youth building Arthur's automotive empire from a small startup into a global monopoly. He was a silent prodigy, a self-taught mechanical and electrical engineer who lived in the freezing depths of the corporate development labs, working 80-hour weeks for minimum wage. Leo could look at a complex chemical blueprint or a thermal matrix code and detect a microscopic flaw in a matter of seconds. Arthur, the ruthless and media-obsessed CEO, treated Leo like invisible machinery, taking credit for every single revolutionary battery patent Leo designed and presenting them to Wall Street as his own personal genius. The ultimate turning point arrived on a dark, stormy winter night. While auditing the final source code for the company's highly anticipated flagship electric vehicle, the Zeus 1, Leo discovered a terrifying mathematical anomaly in the core thermal management system. Under sustained highway speeds, the solid-state chemical cells wouldn't just degrade, they would trigger a catastrophic, irreversible thermal runaway, turning the luxury vehicle into a metal furnace for its passengers. Leo immediately brought his physical data logs directly to Arthur's top-floor luxury office, expecting an urgent production recall to save lives. Instead, Arthur looked at the data, realized a public recall would delay the company's multi-billion-dollar Wall Street IPO, and made a cold, monstrous calculation. He accused Leo of fabricating the safety data to extort the company and engaging in corporate espionage for competitors. Leo was immediately escorted out of the global headquarters by armed private security, his career utterly destroyed, his name blacklisted from every engineering firm in the nation. To ensure Leo could never speak to the press, Arthur forced him into a predatory, hostile severance agreement. In exchange for not filing fabricated criminal charges against him, Arthur offered him to sell him an abandoned toxic waste corporate property, a collapsed, ruined warehouse garage in the industrial slums, for Leo's entire life savings of exactly $1,000 cash. Leo, looking directly into Arthur's cold, arrogant eyes, signed the papers without a word. He knew a secret Arthur had long forgotten. That specific garage was the original highly classified private laboratory of the company's founding engineer before Arthur hostilely took over the business decades ago. Leo walked away into the rain with the keys, leaving Arthur laughing with his corrupt board members about how they had successfully dumped a legal environmental liability onto a broke, desperate peasant. The interior of the old garage was a complete nightmare of decay, filled with rusted oil drums, collapsed steel ceiling beams, and the suffocating smell of stagnant chemical waste. For any ordinary person, this property was a financial death sentence and a toxic trap. But Leo didn't see ruin, he saw a fortress of absolute opportunity. For 3 completely sleepless weeks, he worked entirely alone under the dim, flickering light of a single battery-powered lantern, clearing hundreds of pounds of industrial debris and broken brickwork. His true target was never on the surface. On the 24th day, while tearing down a rotting wooden tool rack against the deep back wall, Leo noticed that the concrete floors beneath it didn't echo like solid earth. They sounded completely hollow. He used a heavy iron crowbar and a sledgehammer to smash through a thick double-layered floor of old poured industrial concrete, revealing a reinforced military-grade blast door made of solid, unyielding titanium. The door was secured by an obsolete, unpowered biometric mechanical lock system. Utilizing his unmatched, brilliant knowledge of vintage industrial security and electrical bypassing, Leo spent 48 continuous hours building a custom frequency device out of scrap vehicle parts. When the final internal titanium gear clicked open, the heavy blast door groaned under immense pressure, swinging slowly inward to reveal a massive, pristine underground laboratory frozen in time since the mid-1970s. The advanced air filtration systems, miraculously powered by an independent, deep geothermal generator, suddenly hummed back to life, clearing the ancient dust. Leo walked down the concrete steps, his heart pounding violently against his chest. In the center of the subterranean vault sat the absolute holy grail of clean energy. 3 fully built, operational, and perfectly preserved prototypes of a high-density, self-cooling chemical matrix battery. Beside them lay thousands of pages of original handwritten research notes and legal laboratory logs. This was the legendary lost Project Vanguard, a battery technology so infinitely advanced it bypassed the need for rare lithium entirely. Arthur's company had spent $500 million of investor money trying to reinvent this exact formula and failed because Arthur had burned the original digital archives during his hostile takeover, never realizing the physical prototypes were safely locked directly beneath the junk property he just sold to Leo for a mere $1,000. Leo spent the next 3 months underground, working in absolute, brilliant secrecy away from the eyes of the corporate world. He discovered through deep research that the original patents for Project Vanguard had been legally abandoned by the federal government due to decades of inactivity, meaning they were now entirely in the public domain for anyone to claim. Because Leo now legally owned the physical surface property and the subterranean land rights without any exclusions, he filed for a brand new, comprehensive global patent under his own newly registered entity, Apex Energy Systems. He didn't issue press releases or talk to the media. He simply sat in the shadows, waiting for his trap to spring on Arthur. Meanwhile, Arthur's company launched the Zeus 1 electric vehicle line to massive global media fanfare, sending the company's stock price soaring to historic highs. But within 90 days, the exact engineering disaster Leo had predicted manifested with brutal, unyielding precision. Dozens of luxury cars caught fire spontaneously on major highways across the United States due to thermal failure. The national media went into a massive frenzy. Federal safety regulators launched immediate criminal investigations into Arthur's safety reports, and Arthur's corporate stock lost 60% of its entire value in a single week. Billion-dollar institutional investors panicked on Wall Street, threatening to withdraw all capital and force liquidation unless Arthur acquired a working, stable, solid-state battery alternative immediately. Desperate to save his life's work from total bankruptcy, Arthur's intelligence team notified him of a mysterious, quiet startup that had just registered the world's only indestructible solid-state chemical matrix battery. The global tech industry was calling it the absolute future of clean energy. Arthur immediately commanded his chief executive assistant, a highly professional woman dressed in a very modest, loose-fitting business suit and a formal cloche hat covering her hair completely, to arrange an emergency, high-stakes acquisition meeting with the anonymous owner of Apex Energy Systems at any cost, telling her to offer blank checks to secure the technology before the company collapsed. The final confrontation took place in the glass boardroom of New York's most prestigious financial skyscraper. Arthur arrived with an army of 20 elite corporate defense lawyers, his heart racing violently, sweating through his custom-tailored Italian suit. The massive double doors opened, and Leo walked in, dressed in an immaculate, sharp black executive suit, exuding an aura of absolute, cold authority that left the room completely silent. Arthur's jaw dropped instantly, his face turning pale as paper as he staggered backward. You stole this technology from my company labs!" Arthur screamed at the top of his lungs, slamming his fists heavily onto the table. Leo remained perfectly calm, slowly sitting down at the head of the table and sliding a thick black leather folder across the glass surface. Leo's legal counsel stepped forward, presenting the original, binding property transfer contract that Arthur himself had forced Leo to sign 6 months ago to humiliate him. The contract explicitly in bold letters that the buyer gained total, unconditional ownership of the land, the structure, and all subsurface contents without exemption, waiving future corporate claims to avoid environmental cleanup liabilities. Arthur had legally signed away a multi-billion-dollar treasure to save a few $1,000s in waste removal costs. Arthur's high-priced lawyers looked at the document, turned to their CEO with pale faces, and slowly closed their briefcases. There was absolutely no legal loophole in existence. Arthur realized his empire was completely dead. He fell to his knees on the hard floor, weeping openly, begging Leo to give him a licensing deal to save his family name from ruin. Leo looked down at the man who had tried to destroy his life, stayed completely silent for a long, agonizing and dramatic moment, and then calmly said, "No." Within 30 days, Arthur's company collapsed into total bankruptcy. During the federal court liquidation auction, Apex Energy Systems bought the entire global corporate infrastructure of Arthur's company for pennies on the dollar. Leo moved his global headquarters into the very same skyscraper he was once kicked out of by armed guards, while keeping the old, ruined junk garage as a permanent monument to the power of silent, brilliant justice.